Great. So I'm recording this. So those of you joining live, you can revisit, and those of you that can't make it today can experience this class in your own time. So what I've suggested gathering today is a chair, if possible. It could be your sofa or an armchair, or it might be easier to have some kind of dining room chair just so you can move it around. And then a bed cushion, a bed pillow. We're going to make our own bolster. So we could actually do that now just to have it ready for later. And then I've asked you to gather 3 either blankets or towels. So preferably 1 blanket within that, but it could be 2 blankets and a towel or 3 blankets. And a sort of special item today is a bandage. And you'll see why later. If you don't have a bandage, then you might have an eye bag, if you've got the luxury of having like a weighted eye bag, or a scarf. So you can use any of those 3 things, or you may just leave that part out, and that's absolutely fine. So to make a homemade bolster, I'm going to take one of the blankets and open it out. I'm going to open mine out sort of twice to make this sort of size. We're all going to have a different size blanket, but something that your pillow, your bed pillow, can fit on top of. And I'm actually going to go from this end, and then just roll your blanket up, or roll your pillow up within your blanket. And I'm just making a sort of more rounded like shape. So tucking it in as I roll. And you should end up with something looking that kind of shape. Might be a little bit more rounded or a little flatter, that doesn't matter. It's just to give us some extra support later on. And you can just pop that to the side for the time being. That's going to be used a little later on. Yeah, gather what you need. And then before we come into our official practice, you may also like to just take your towel or blanket and roll it up into an oval shape. So I'm going to take mine longer rather than shorter end, because the longer it is, the lower it will be. And this is going to be used for a thoracic spinal release. So for me, I'm going to go my long end, and I'm just going to fold it over sort of a couple of inches and then roll it. And that should create a oval-like shape. So if you've got a much thicker blanket than this, what you might find is that it's too high for your spine, for your upper back. So refold it if when we come into it, it feels too high, or use a thinner towel or blanket. And we'll just also have that off to the side also. Right. So today's class, today's practice, I'd like us to address headaches. It's something that I've suffered from a lot in my life, and it's really common. I think lots of people do. And there's lots of reasons why we might get a headache. It could be down to diet or alcohol or hydration. But the 3 sort of most common types of headaches, the ones that people go and seek advice for, are the tension headaches, which generally are caused by tension, stress, anxiety and depression can make these types of headaches a lot worse. And really the antidote to tension headaches is relaxation and doing less, really. And then there's muscle contracted headaches, which are generally caused by bad posture, or not always bad posture, but it might be posture that's held for long periods of time. So if you're doing a job at a computer, or if you're doing lots of work in the garden and you're in a particular posture and muscles get really overworked, We talked last week about the natural curvatures of the spine. So when these natural curves come out of alignment or collapse, then it's the muscles that are having to take a lot of the strain of the posture. So the neck, the shoulders get over tight and fatigued, and that can often be the cause of headaches. And then the third, migraines, which is horrendous to suffer if you're a migraine sufferer. And it's best to go and seek advice from a doctor if you're worried about these. Fairly common sense, but this is a different type of headache to do with blood vessels constricting and circulation. So we're going to focus mostly on the sort of tension and contracted muscle realm of headaches today. I've actually started reading a book. I haven't got very far through it, but I will find the title of it and let you know at the end. Some of you, if you are headache sufferers, might find that useful. So what we'll do today is mostly a restorative practice. Headaches tend to come when we are very busy, or whether that's physically busy or mentally busy. A lot of the energy and the attention moves up into this sort of realm of our body, and yoga and meditation is a fantastic way of re-establishing attention in a different part of the body, and therefore just helping release that tension and that activation and that busyness. And personally, I find that any kind of practice can be really helpful for my headache. If I've got a headache and I come into a practice, it tends to be better at the end. And a lot of you have commented that you might have come into class with a headache and then it's gone by the end. Sometimes it doesn't go that way. Sometimes it feels worse through practice. And I do just really recommend that you feel it out, whether you have a headache today or not, or whether you're revisiting this at a different point. Then you're your own boss. I don't know how you feel. So you know that if it is getting worse, or if certain postures are aggravating or causing tension that wasn't normally there, then I really encourage you to be the boss of that. So you change and adapt it how you feel is necessary. And a lot of that is just playfulness and trial and error, just feeling it out and noticing the changes. That is the essence of practice, really, to figure out what is right for you moment to moment. Good. So I'm going to suggest we come and sit on our chair. You could sit on the floor if you'd like, but some of the movements will probably feel a little better seated on a chair. And sit in a way that those natural spinal curves can be present. So we talked about this last week. Even if you're sitting towards the back of the chair, so say that was the back of my chair, my sacrum will be right up against the chair, so that I'm using some support of the chair, but I'm also not just slumping down. As soon as you lean back into your chair, your tailbone will tuck, your lumbar curve will disappear, and there's a lot of weight and strain on the lower back. So a nice elongated spine. Make sure that you're comfortable, your heels are underneath your knees. And just noticing what is present as you begin your practice this morning. And really do take care if there's very low energy present today, or if there is pain or headache. So remember, this is your practice. Do what feels right for you. And you might like to just close your eyes briefly. And I invite you just to rest your one palm or two palms on your skull, relaxing your shoulders as much as possible. And you're not pressing here, but just a gentle resting of your hands on your skull, and just sense that touch. I've got my heels of my hands around the temples, and then my fingers drawing towards the center of the upper skull. And then just moving the hands around the circumference of your skull. Noticing if your hands are cool or warm, and what effect that has of the sensation of this touch. And this kind of touch, I'm also coming around and touching the back of my neck and the back of my skull, doesn't need to be very firm. You can have an experiment with putting a little bit more pressure on, putting a little less pressure on, and just noticing how that feels. And I'm going to come into the forehead, into the stroking motion of the soft fingertips, the really soft fingertips just stroking from the center of the forehead out to the temples. And noticing whether there is a tendency to go at this quite quickly or quite hard. And I really encourage you just to slow the movement right down. And maybe even exploring a gentler touch, a much softer, more conscious touch. Maybe taking a couple more strokes, including the eyebrows as well. There can be a lot of tension creeping in behind the eyes and the eyebrows. And then coming down the face. So I quite like coming down the center of the nose and then across the cheeks and down through the jaw. So top of the forehead, down through the center, under the eyes and around. And of course, do adapt this movement to suit the range of motion in the shoulders, the arms, or if there's any pain or discomfort in the face, and do just skip areas that need skipping. Come to the neck, and the neck can take perhaps a little bit more pressure. But again, don't go too strong. Whether you're doing this one-armed, if you're doing it one-armed, you might come to the opposite shoulder. And it's these trapezius muscles and the sternocleidomastoid muscles in the neck that they hold a lot of tension. You might be sort of noticing that as you move through your own body. Good. And any other movements you're feeling drawn to doing, any other touch, just make it organic and spontaneous. Might be some brushes. I love going into the skull with my fingertips, and that can be really very lovely if the skull feels quite tight and tense. So I'll just let you finish that little exploration off, and then encourage you to come into a meditation posture. I'm just going to come to the floor so that I can press record on another device. But you set yourself up on your chair in a posture that feels sustainable. So it might be that you adjust it slightly. Know that you can move as well at any time. And finding a place to rest your arms. And actually, before you settle, hopefully you've got your bolster at hand. How about just trying your bolster on your lap today for your meditation, so that you can rest your elbows on your bolster, and it could be a cushion, and just letting your shoulders slide down the back. So you've got a nice long neck, you've got no weight, your arms can just be dead weight into the bolster. So making any other little adjustments you need. And as we start our meditation together today, closing your eyes if you'd like to, or dropping your gaze. And as you arrive in this seated posture, reviewing where your attention is. Where, if you imagine your body, if you sense your body as energetic, where would the majority of your energy be? And personally, quite often I find naturally my energy and attention is in my upper body, and we do tend to hold our attention sort of above the diaphragm and chest and head. So as you sense into where your attention naturally is right now, I invite you to embody your entire physical shape. So feel your shape as you sit. And bring to mind an hourglass, an image of an hourglass, or a tea timer. So a device where there are two cavities, the lower cavity having all the sand at the bottom, the upper cavity being empty. And we're often the other way around. So the sand being our attention in the upper cavity and none in the bottom cavity. So if you imagine that upper cavity to be the head of your body and the chest of your torso, all the way down to your diaphragm or your solar plexus, and then the lower cavity being your abdominal basin, your pelvis, so everything below the diaphragm. So as you sense into your body now, could you get an overview of that shape, as if your head was the upper cavity of the hourglass, including your chest, shoulders, and then the lower cavity, as it expands out from the center, around, and then back to the base, is the lower torso, the abdomen, the pelvis. So how might it be to tip your hourglass? You've got all the sand, all the awareness in the head. Just sensing into your head, resting on top of your spine. And just like you would a muscle, how would it be to soften the contents of your head? As you do so, the eyes relaxing. And like a downward moving, sinking quality, can you sense your attention moving through, from the crown of the head through the center of the skull, past the eyes? And as your attention starts to sink, could there be an attitude of softening and yielding as you move into the throat? You might even take some breaths out of the mouth, helping release any restriction or tension in the throat. Kindly and gently starting to sink your attention into the upper chest. Just noticing what you feel here as you apply that attitude of softening and yielding. Traveling down through the area of your heart. Noticing what you notice here. And then down through your diaphragm, the lower part of your rib cage. You might sense the whole area of your rib cage as the upper cavity of your hourglass. And then as you glide your attention down through your solar plexus, that being like the little funnel of your hourglass, as that attention, that sand starts to sink down into your lower cavity, you start to sense the skin and the shape of the lower torso. So it might be more accessible to start by feeling the base of your lower cavity, the base of your pelvis as it sits on your seat. Feeling up the sides of your waist, the front of the pelvis, the front of the abdomen, the lower back, sacrum. Just trusting that as you get a felt sense of this area of your body, the sand, the attention, the energy will sink into where your attention lies. Allowing this area of your body to gradually emerge. Don't worry if there is a sense of energy or attention still in the upper body, just be patient, knowing that the objective here is to feel the belly, pelvis, the lower cavity. Feeling where your navel sits. Could you imagine that your breath was entering and leaving your body from your navel? How does it feel to breathe as if you could breathe from your navel? So that very naturally, so not forcing or straining, the lower abdomen starts to expand gently like a balloon and then decompress as you breathe out. So all of your awareness on this process of inhaling through the navel, exhaling from the navel. Soft and gentle attention here. Don't need to even lengthen the breath or deepen the breath if that doesn't feel appropriate. Breath can be natural, but the attention is down in the lower torso. And over the next few breaths, how might it be to let go of any strain of concentration or focus? Have a real lightness of awareness of this process. It's expanding the belly a little like a small balloon. Deflating the belly as you breathe out. And then letting go of that balloon breath for the time being. Before we bring this inquiry to a close, I'd like you to just review again how it feels to be sitting here. And perhaps a gentle comparison to when you first arrived on the chair to now. Noticing if you feel any different, if the snapshot of where your attention is resting feels different. So there's a saying with these practices that energy flows where attention goes. So notice if you can sense that, if there is more of an aliveness in your lower cavity as opposed to your head and your chest. A sense of wakefulness. And to close this practice, you could very gently drop your chin towards your chest. And as you begin to blink your eyes open again, getting a sense of how your body is supported by your seat. The floor is supporting your feet and the chair. And on your next inhale, just shrugging your shoulders up towards your ears. And sliding the shoulder blades back down away from the head. And if it feels comfortable to you, you could even just inhale and draw the shoulders up. And as you exhale, the shoulders heavily drop down. Don't do that if you're post-surgery or if there's still some healing happening in the upper body. Take the gentler approach if that's the case. Just a little bit of shoulder hunching. You might even circle the shoulders a couple of times in each direction. And any other movements you're feeling drawn to doing here while you're on your chair. And then if you'd like to, taking a small forward bend, you could try this with your bolster on your lap, or you could move the bolster if it doesn't feel comfortable there. Just taking the chin towards the chest and starting to slowly roll down so that your chest either comes down towards the bolster or comes down towards your thighs. If having pressure on the chest doesn't feel comfortable here, you could keep the elbows on the bolster or on the thighs and just come down part way using your elbows for support. You might be comfortable just resting over the thighs. Taking a couple of breaths wherever you are, breathing into the back body, breathing into the spine. And to come up, pressing down through your feet, rolling up through your spine. You could use your arms to support you as you come all the way back up. So I'm going to move my chair out of the way for now. We will use it again in a moment. And place the pre-rolled blanket on the mat. So say you've got your head end of your mat and your tail end or your feet end. I'm going to place the blanket towards the head end, this being my head. And then you will need a blanket or a pillow. The bolster will be too high for your head. So this roll is going to be about where about an inch below where your tips of your shoulders will sit. And as I lie myself down, can you see that the spinal roll will be supporting my upper back, and then I want something to support my head and my neck. So what I'm finding with my blanket is it's too low, so I'm going to fold mine in half, but you might have something else like a pillow there. So feel into that. Notice if when you put your head down, you've got enough support for your head and your neck. And hopefully you can see that the blanket roll is about an inch below the tops of my shoulders, so in line with my shoulder blades. And you can really make this thoracic spinal release what you'd like, but what I'm going to do is bring a little bit of shifting, sideward shifting movements, so that what's happening here is that there's a massaging quality to the movement as I start to release the upper back. And of course, if there's pressure happening on any part of your body that doesn't feel appropriate, then please do adapt this. Adapt it to make it feel suitable for you and your body today. And what can be lovely here is actually going quite far over to the side so that you can massage into the sides of the shoulders, sides of the rib cage. And your legs will just come along for the ride. If moving in this way doesn't feel appropriate, you might just stay and be still. You can sort of, if you are moving, you could move the arms a little bit like sort of floating seaweed at the West Coast, bull kelp. It's a nice image. And what I'm going to start to do is shimmy my way so that I'm coming down the length of my spine. So I'm going to shift my head support a little further back. You could do it this way, or you could lift yourself off the support and move the support down the back. And can you be sensitive to any little releases, any pops, any softenings occurring in the fascia, the connective tissue of the back? And there might be areas of this part of your body that you'd like to spend longer on. There might be areas that you'd like to skip past if they don't feel appropriate to put weight on. If the arms get achy, it can be nice just to rest the hands on the chest, sort of opposite hand to shoulder. And we'll just come down to the lower rib cage today. We won't go into the lower back today. Just come down to the lower rib cage. And if you are suffering from a headache, this kind of very gentle movement can be really helpful for just taking the attention off the pain in the head and directing the attention into the felt quality of this release. And you might make your way back up the spine, or you might be working in a particular area. And don't overdo it. So if you're feeling that this area is quite tight, then you might just want sort of a minute or so here. Some of you might just be having an aha moment and just really enjoying this sense of touch on your body. And if that's the case, then take as long as you need. But once you've reached the lower rib cage, then you can release the spinal roll and just take it to the side. And you could either keep the knees bent and feet on the floor, you could extend the legs away. Just take a moment just to sense into the after effect of that thoracic release. Make sure that your neck is well supported. So whatever you have under your head, you might bring it right up into the nook of your neck. Maybe taking a couple of sighs out of the mouth as you find the floor, as your body finds stillness on the floor. How does that feel? Just to have that support. Head nice and heavy on the ground. Maybe even some very gentle movements from side to side. The head. This kind of movement reminds me a bit like a hamster in a hamster ball. You allow the weight of the head to direct the movement rather than the muscles in the neck. I know that sounds a bit elusive or impossible, but just get a sense of the weight of the head just finding its own momentum. And if you'd like, bend the knees up and maybe even just take a moment drawing the knees in towards the chest, just to help lengthen your lower back after that spinal extension-like movement. The hands might be on the knees or the thighs, or the hands might not be part of this at all. And I'm going to invite you in a moment to start to make your way up off the floor. So this next posture is a supported forward bend posture using a chair. And this can be really lovely for headaches. You can do this as standing up as well if you're working and you just need to rest your head for a few breaths. This can be also done stood up. If this doesn't work for you, there are other variations. So I'll give a few options here. But what you'll need to do is have something to sit on. So I'm probably going to take 2 blankets. I'm just going to unroll that spinal roll. So that's the benefit and the I guess hindrance to practicing restorative yoga is that we need lots of props, but once they're set up, then it feels very worth it. Now, I'm going to demonstrate this posture sitting cross-legged, sitting towards the front of my my blanket or my pillows. Blanket or pillows underneath my pelvis. Some of you won't feel comfortable crossing the legs in this way, so find something that does feel comfortable. You might open the legs out either side of your chair. You might bring your pelvis a little bit higher, so sit on a little bit more height. You might have one leg bent, one leg straight, and if that's the case, you will just need to swap sides partway through if you can. So cross-legged or wide-legged, and then taking your bolster. And I'm going to tuck the bolster right into the lower belly here, but it might sort of slip more down into the pelvis. You may have some spare blankets to put on top of your chair if you want a bit of extra height for your arms. And what we're doing here is creating this support into the front of the body, so the back of the body can just drape over. Now I'm turning my head to the side. Some of you might feel more comfortable having your forehead down, in which case you'll probably need another blanket there just for that extra height. And we're all going to have different bolsters here. Mine's sort of collapsing a little bit at the top, but what I'm going to do is just utilize that by drawing my arms in a little bit more to create that stability. If your bolster really isn't working for you, then you could just put your cushion on top of your chair and rest over the top like so. So finding a posture where you can really soften your shoulder blades, even though you're hugging around your bolster, let your shoulder blades relax as much as possible. If you feel as if you're tilting your weight more to the back of your sit bones, try just gently tilting the pelvis forward so you're coming more towards the front of your sit bones. So there's a sense of moving forwards with the pelvis rather than sinking backwards. Oh, nice. It's lovely seeing you all snuggled in. And just notice how that feels as you arrive in this posture. You get a sense of really giving the weight of your head into that support. Even with your head turned to the side, there is a sense of just that support. It might mean bringing the arms in a little more to create that stability there. How might it be over the next sort of 30 seconds or so to explore that balloon breath again? Which is where we imagine we can inhale through the navel and then exhale out of the navel. So that all of the attention, all of the energy drops down to the lower cavity. No right or wrong way to breathe here. So do breathe how it feels pleasant and necessary to breathe. But if you are exploring this balloon breath, not only noticing the expansion through the front of the abdomen, but also the sides and the lower back. And perhaps sense that on each exhale there is a little bit more weight yielding down into the ground. And so if you are in an asymmetrical position, which I'm sure we all are, you might like to take this time to swap the legs over or turn your head to the other side. So making sure that you're visiting both sides. Even just a minute or two in this posture helps bring the energy down out of the head, down into the belly. And this can be a helpful antidote for headaches or even just mental agitation. Over time, this process of unraveling tension, softening the abdominal wall, gradually releasing to allow that movement of the breath. And perhaps just taking a couple more breaths here. And when you feel ready to, starting to turn the head so that it's square if it's not already. And starting to bring the weight more into the pelvis as you start to roll yourself away from that support in front of you. Shift all of your faces over to a different side so I can see. Good. So the next posture I'm going to suggest is a supported side lying posture. Now I've just shifted my chair to the back of my mat. You may or may not want it there, but there is an option as we lie in side lying that we lift the arm over the head, and sometimes it can be nice to support it on something. So you can play around with that. Preferably you'd have the chair at the end and then be able to just sort of move it out of the way if it's not needed. So what we're going to need here is a head support. So one of your blankets, I'm going to fold mine in half because we're side lying. And then preferably, I've actually only got the same size blanket. If you've got a thinner blanket or towel, this will be a good place to use it. I'm just going to make a roll, like a sausage roll. So if you've got a smaller towel or blanket, that'll be useful here. I'm just going to pop that on top of my head support. And then the bolster is, or the cushion, if it's all kind of come unraveled, is going to be supporting underneath the side weight. So I'm going to lie on my right side first. Now, of course, if lying on your side isn't comfortable, if lying on one side isn't comfortable, then please do add any extra support that you need. Or it might be that you just visit this one-sided if lying on one side doesn't feel appropriate today. So the pelvis is definitely on the floor, not on the bolster. And I'm going to drape myself over. It's a bit of sort of playing with positioning here. Drape myself over this bolster. Shoulder goes on the floor, and then head support. This roll is going to nestle right up into the neck. So I can feel that my head isn't high enough here. So what I'm actually going to do is unroll my 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 roll, and I'm just going to roll it part way, so I've got a little bit more height there for the rest of my head. So you might do the same, or you might not need to do that if your head support is high enough. Lovely. So do adapt this. It should feel aha moment rather than something not quite right here. And then you might have a spare something to put between your knees and ankles there if you'd like that, or just finding a comfortable place to rest your legs. Now this might be enough for you here. It can be lovely for decompressing compression in the cervical spine, having this lovely support here underneath the neck. And coming into this side bend, you could extend the arm up over the head and either rest it on your chair or even rest it just over your head. Or another one, you could just bend the elbow that it rests. The three options, or you could find your own on the chair, over the head, or just behind. And what can be lovely adding the arm into this is that you're getting this nice lengthening up the side of the body. And helping to release tension created through the rib cage, the intercostal muscles between the rib cage. It can get very tight and tired when we breathe up into the chest. It can be a cause of headaches if we're very anxious and we're breathing up into the chest, and there's more and more tension being created in the upper back and the shoulders. And so as you breathe, can you feel into that space that you're creating? Feel that lovely expansion through the rib cage. And see whether you might be able to yield a little bit more of your weight into the support down that side body, the waist, the sides of the ribs, and the side of the head. And the more the body can yield and soften and take that support, receive that support, the freer the breath can become. The freer the breath can become, the more relaxed the body can become. So if at any time, if you do bring your arm down, then you can just rest it on your side. That feels comfortable. You could also just curl in and make this more of a sort of fetal posture. Finding something that feels restful. Often in times of tension and headaches, the very act of just lying down and having that feedback of the neck being supported, the body knowing it's time that it can rest, that relief of coming to rest. And of course, if you need to stay longer on this side, then please do. But if you feel ready to start to transition over to your second side, if coming onto that side is appropriate for you today, then do so nice and slowly. You can make your transition part of your practice by staying conscious. How does it feel physically as you start to transition your weight? And taking the same amount of care in your setup as you did on your first side. So making sure that you've got your neck roll nestled right up into the cervical, or the side of the cervical spine. And as you're cascading your side body, your waist over that support, perhaps lifting the arm over the head, creating more space between your thoracic vertebrae. So remember those 12 vertebrae in the upper spine before you get to the neck. That can become compressed as we spend time, long periods of time sitting. So as subtle as this posture might feel, that helping refine your awareness so that as you breathe, could you get a sense of breathing into the space that you've created? And the breath might be very, very small, it might be very subtle. Or it might feel deeper and more expansive. It really doesn't matter. The important thing is here that you're just allowing your body to reset, to recalibrate. As you completely release any effort of holding in the neck, in the head. Breathing down into your diaphragm. This restoration and this process of being still is a process. You can be patient and curious as you leave your experience alone and just allow the unraveling to unfold. As the body feels safer in this posture, there can be more sense of weight being dropped into the support. And then you feel ready, starting the very slow transition out of this support. Good. So I had planned for another posture here, but I'm afraid we're going to have to leave that one till next week. So we'll just skip on to the final posture, because I'd really like you to just settle into a very lovely rest. So this is where our bandage or scarf comes into play. So this addition, this prop, is suggested by one of my teachers, Judith Hanson Lasseter. She's basically the pioneer of restorative yoga. So yeah, a very influential figure and has helped lots of people in a wonderful way. So if you don't, maybe just have a little look at this first. You can sort of play around at the same time, but once your eyes are covered, then you won't be able to see. So actually that's just reminded me that maybe we should set up our posture before we put the bandage on. So we probably won't need the chair unless you'd really like it to put your legs on. Bolster can be lovely to just rest the backs of your knees over. So my legs are just going to rest over this bolster. Yeah. And then what I'd love you to do is create a beautiful neck support with one of your blankets. So let's just tilt you down a little bit here. So what I'm going to do is fold my blanket in half, but then leave, so not quite in half, leave a couple of inches there at the end of the blanket. I'm just going to neaten my folds a little better. So as you can see, I've folded my blanket not quite in half. And then I always find this hard to demonstrate because I want to show you how to get into it, but I also want to show you what's happening down underneath my head. So as I lie myself down, my tips of my shoulders are going to rest up to the edge of this blanket. So the very tips of the shoulders will be just over this blanket fold. And as I lie my head down, I'm going to take this top fold and roll it underneath my neck. Now I try this, do this posture a lot with this support, and I try both ways. I fold it this way underneath the nook of my neck, like we just did side lying, or you could roll it this way. Actually, I prefer that way. It's less sort of ridgy in the neck. So I'll show you also when I'm lying down. And then what's going to happen once you're lying down, you've got that lovely nook neck support, you can fold all these four corners underneath themselves. And essentially what you're creating is this nest. So tips of the shoulders up to this line, neck nestled into this roll that you're going to roll into it, and then all the four corners wrapped underneath themselves. So you're creating this lovely holding nest. And I'll demonstrate that actually coming into it. And you can have a try if you'd like, but we will be coming back off the floor in a moment to sort the bandage part out. So tips of the shoulders up to the bottom fold or bottom layer, taking this top layer and folding it either direction. I'm going to fold it underneath itself. And I've created this little roll for the nook of the neck. And then I'm going to start by taking, and really you want to be right in the center of your blanket here, take the outer corners and roll them underneath themselves so that you can really get that lovely nest-like shape into the head. Oh, that's just so lovely. Maybe we don't need bandage. Anyway, I'm going to show you the bandage as well. So hopefully you've got everything there ready, and you might just have a look at this and just have it in your mind that it's something that you could play around with at some point. So I just like to give you that option, but you may not come into it today. So with my bandage, I'm going to start at the back of my head, around the sort of back of my ear. And what you have to be careful of doing, which I've noticed over time, is that if you've got a really elastic bandage like mine, as you're pulling it around and wrapping the head up, then if you're creating too much pressure, it can be a bit too much by the end. So the idea behind this is just to create a little bit of pressure around the skull and around the temples and the eyes to encourage a softening and release. But it's also closing out the stimulus from around you, the light, maybe some of the sound. It's like you're really sort of hibernating inwards. So yeah, you can just sort of wrap. So what I tend to do is just one wrap around the head first, and then come down the eye on one side. So just being careful not to pull it tight as you're wrapping. Around again and over the other eye. So there is this a little bit of pressure forming around the eyes, around the temple, and I've got a really long one here, so I'm just going to keep wrapping. But at some point, you can tuck the end of your bandage into some of the wraparound. Be careful not to fold it into the back, because you're going to be lying on your back and you don't want that ridge to be sticking in. So go into the side or the front and just tuck that to the side there. So it shouldn't feel that there is lots of pressure on the head or the eyes, just a little bit of pressure. And once it's on, what you can do is just lift it up so you can see, and you can get into posture, and then you can tip it down when you're ready. So that's one option. You can do the same with your scarf. If it feels a bit too claustrophobic having that there, then it could be as simple as just a little wraparound with your scarf, just to block out the light and a very gentle bit of pressure. Or if you have the luxury of an eye bag, a weighted eye bag, that can be really lovely. If you are a headache sufferer, then I highly recommend either investing or making one of these. I think this is flax seed or buckwheat seed in here, and there's lavender in there as well, and you can just weight the eyes down in that way. So wherever you are right now, coming into your final rest, whether you've got a bandage around the eyes or whether you'd just like to put a scarf or a blanket over the eyes. So making sure that you are as comfortable as you can be here. Making any little adjustments you need to. Checking that your neck support is right, nestled up to the neck. Maybe take some lovely sigh-like exhales, this sense of relief coming to the body as you know that don't need to attend to anything here. There's nothing that needs to be done or attended to. Allowing this time for complete rest. As you sink into the arms of support around you, around the head, around the body. Those messages being received from your sensory nervous system that there isn't a need for effort here. The muscles are not needed as you lie and sink and soften. Very gently sensing into the skull of the head, brain within the skull. Sense of the brain shrinking away from the skull. There's like a softening, a permission to quieten. So that the fascia around the skull can release. The muscles around the eyes can soften. And the cheeks and the jaw is relaxed. Relax your jaw, your throat. Just like we did in our meditation, as we imagined our body like an hourglass with two separate cavities. It's getting a sense of your energy, your attention dropping downwards, dropping and sinking and settling. So that any sand, any attention left in the upper body is sinking downwards through the center of your solar plexus and down into your lower cavity. And to help this transition of attention, you could bring back the balloon breath. If you find that helpful, you could imagine the inhalation through the navel, the exhalation out of the navel. It feels hard to make that transition. Sometimes it can be helpful to place the hands on the belly. So that felt sense of touch enables you to sink into that feeling. And there's definitely not the attitude of trying to make anything happen here. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's a natural settling that we are invoking here. So letting go of that part of the mind that wants to achieve, that wants to attend to. Sinking back and down into a deeper place beyond conceptual thinking. Reflecting that the very deepest part of yourself is always at ease. Your essence is always peaceful and calm. And I know sometimes it's hard to remember that, but when we do, it can be a refuge. To know the very essence of our being is peace. And this act of slowing, stilling, is the doorway to that essence of your being. Turning away from external stimulus, giving yourself the chance and time to settle the mind, so that gradually those fluctuations quieten. Gradually the nervous system settles and quietens. And over time, gradually unraveling of layers of noise, of activity, can gradually subside, leaving just the essence, stillness, that calm, much like the backdrop where everything arises, passes out of and back into. Abide here for a little while. And it might just be the knowledge that it's there that can be your refuge. That calm place doesn't feel present for you today, then How might it be to imagine it? To remember a beautifully peaceful and calm place that you have visited or that you might imagine. Evoking the feeling you get when you're there. Might be in the mountains or on a beach or by your favourite window. The quality that is felt when you're physically in a peaceful, quiet place. Guiding your own physical body as you rest within it. And as we come towards the end of this practice today, I really do encourage you, if you've got the time, that you might just stay here for another 5-10 minutes. So you can turn the recording off if that's something that you feel that you've got time to do. Particularly if you're feeling tired today, or you've got a headache, or you're not feeling well. This peaceful realm that we reside in when we go to sleep or when we're really relaxed is the greatest place to be if you're feeling unwell or exhausted. And of course, if you need to get on with your day, then you can start to transition your way out. You've got a bandage or some covering over your head, then you might just remove that first before you move, just to allow the light back in. And might lie on your side as a transition. So I will just bring this recording to an end, but there's always the chance to connect to each other if you'd like to, or comment on your experience. So namaste to you all. Hope this practice brings some ease or some benefits.